Hi, everyone. Welcome to our State of the District. I'm your state senator, Josh Becker, for our 13th Senate District. Thank you for joining me here tonight. I really appreciate everyone's time. I know there's a lot of things you can be doing in this last week before the holidays, and I appreciate you joining here. We're going to talk about some of what I've been up to this year, some of the progress, some of the challenges, and hope by the end you'll feel like we do have solutions to many of the issues facing us, but I'll also cover areas where I didn't make as much progress as I would have liked. And in some of those areas, I'm going to need your help as well. As they say, it takes a village, as with any great challenge. And at the end, we'll talk about getting your ideas and how you can help. So thanks for being here today. I'm going to go through a bunch of slides, and hopefully you can still see me while it's going on your side. And then we're going to have some special guests joining us as we go through here today. And we called it for an hour, probably go longer, maybe as much as an hour and a half. If you can stick around with us, that's great. Otherwise, we'll have this available for viewing afterwards as well. The mission statement for my office and my team is we strive to provide measurable results and exceptional public service for our community. And in addition, I think about the framework for what I call the 4 C's: contribution, compassion, cooperation, and community. So we're focused on solutions. If we're going to make progress, we have to think outside the box. And we need to think about it in those areas where people are frustrated, where it comes to property crime and petty theft, areas like homelessness. These are in areas where we can make a difference, and I need to do more. I got involved because I want the same things for my kids that I think you want for your kids: good schools, clean streets, clean water and clean air, economic opportunity. And we could show other districts the way forward and the model, but we have to make it work here. And we need a policy and participation focused on uniting and not dividing. Many of my legislation that I'll talk about today, actually 3/4 of the bills that I passed this year had bipartisan support in the legislature. So I think that's something that hopefully can be encouraging for everyone in these sometimes divided times. I have, in my 3 years so far, I've had 35 bills signed by the governor, 88 co-authored bills signed into law. And as we'll talk about today, what do those mean to you? Those are solutions around homelessness. Those are economic opportunity in our district. They represent work on healthcare and climate. And we'll talk about some of them here today. And then 40 million that I've secured directly for projects on the peninsula, everything from an economic mobility center in East Palo Alto to water infrastructure in Burlingame, parks in Millbrae, affordable housing in Mountain View and North Fair Oaks, greening downtown Los Altos, greening homes in Menlo Park, trails in Sunnyvale, up and down the district, economic opportunity center in South San Francisco. So things that have been really just specific projects that have been very fun because I get to bring a big check and present it locally. And we're still doing actually 2 more of those tomorrow. We have one for farm worker housing this week, money that I've secured on the coast for farm worker housing. And that's among the most fun things that I do, is be able to bring these big check backs and talk about some of the specific projects that I've gotten money for directly for our district. Here's a commitment to the community. This is from my new office opening. We have an office now that's going to be centrally located to the district in Menlo Park, and we'll talk about how the district's changing in 2024 in a moment. A lot of what we do is casework, specific casework when constituents call us up and they've got an issue. We've fully resolved successfully 850 cases so far this year, and as you can see, the top areas are EDD, Not surprising, although that number is way down from numbers that we dealt with during the pandemic. Um, 96 franchise tax board cases, and then Department of Motor Vehicles and Utilities and PG&E. In the state taxes and debit cards, we still are dealing with some people who got these debit cards from the state. We had cash payments of around $300 for most people, and a lot of people couldn't figure out, still have those, and weren't figure out how to actually get the money. So we've been working with them on that. So this is what we do. The district office really focused on that kind of casework. The cities and communities, you can see most of San Mateo County, including the coast to the Bay, and then northern Santa Clara County. What's changing in 2024 is Sunnyvale is going to be not part of the district going forward. What will be part of the district going forward is the communities of Saratoga, Cupertino, Campbell, Los Gatos, and Montessorino. And so that's how it's changing. Everything else in the district is staying the same. I have half of South San Francisco. It's the only city that was split to kind of work out the population. Now we're going to go into some of the areas that I've worked on this year. Education, big priority of mine. As I mentioned, I went the same thing for my kids that I went for your kids. Both my kids went through our public schools. My last kid, my son, is a senior in one of our public high schools here. And across the state, we've increased per pupil spending by $6,000 per pupil, which is really quite extraordinary. In higher ed, we've invested $1 billion more each in UC system and the CSU system. And that's come with the demand from myself and others to secure more spots for in-state students, including those from our local communities. So we've done that. We've gotten we have specific numbers of between 350 and 500 seats at the 3 most selective UCs, and then thousands more across the UC system. And one of the new projects actually this year is we're actually launching debt-free college for all foster care youth across the state of California. That's a new initiative. And then in San Mateo County, I wrote a law to create truly free community college. And that's truly free. That means tuition, fees, books, transportation, housing, and there are 11,790 students right now taking advantage of a truly free community college. And 56% of those students are first-generation students, but those are all students from San Mateo County. And we're trying to do that now in Santa Clara County as well. I was proud to be named the Legislator of the Year by the California School Board Association. This is all the county school boards across the state vote on this, and you'll see some of our county school board members there, along with our superintendents, our fantastic superintendents, Nancy McGee and Mary Ann Dewan from San Mateo County and Santa Clara County. Childcare and early learning, this has been a priority of mine. You may know my background with the Child Care Partnerships Council in San Mateo County. We're going to hear from the leader of that, Sarah Kinahan, in a moment. And when I started, we had no preschool in California. It was a huge priority of mine. And my very first year, we voted in what we call universal TK, which is a year preschool for every kid in California. So we're phasing it in, and we have a goal of serving 400,000 children for a year preschool by 2026. We're also made a big dent in childcare. So this is free subsidized childcare for families making 75% of the state median income, and then we cap it at 1% up to 96,000. Now, again, you have to qualify for subsidized childcare, and we still need more subsidized spaces here in San Mateo County. So excuse me, we still have a waiting list between 1,000 and 2,000 people, but we are making progress, and we'll talk about that with Sarah in a moment. We created the first in the nation retirement plan for childcare workers, and we did significant pay raises, although a lot of work still to go in that area, but still significant pay raises for early childcare workers with health and training investments. And so now I'm joined by Sarah Kinahan. Sarah is the coordinator of the San Mateo County Child Care Partnerships Council and one of the real leaders throughout the Bay Area in childcare and early learning. Welcome, Sarah.
Thank you so much, Senator Becker, for inviting me to be here tonight. I'm excited to talk about how policies and funding decisions that are made up in Sacramento are impacting childcare right here in San Mateo County. Our council recently conducted a needs assessment to understand parents' childcare needs, and we learned that affordability of childcare was the highest consideration for families, with 65% of respondents indicating that affordable childcare was hard to find. Another striking result was that 73% of survey respondents stated that they'd turned down work at some point due to a lack of childcare. We're hopeful that new state investments highlighted by Senator Becker will begin to address the issues of childcare affordability and availability in our county. One of the most significant changes, as Senator Becker mentioned, has been to the process for assessing fees for subsidized care. Without a subsidy, a family with an infant and a preschooler could easily pay over $45,000 a year for their full-time care. Now, qualifying families who receive a subsidy pay nothing if their income is below that 75% state median income, and all others have their fees capped. For example, a family who's previously paying close to $600 a month will now only be paying $72 a month, really significant for these low-income working families. California has also increased the availability of early learning and care programs by raising the income cutoff so more families qualify for the subsidies, as well as expanding transitional kindergarten, as was mentioned, and adding more subsidized childcare, preschool, and after-school spaces, resulting in thousands more children being served in our county. We hope the state will continue these expansions so there can be a program for all of the 26,000 children in our county who qualify for subsidized care. In addition to prioritizing care for low-income children, California has been increasing access to preschool for children with disabilities by making any preschooler with a disability eligible for state preschool. Here at the San Mateo County Office of Education, we've been excited to grow our inclusive preschool at the Ann Campbell Child Development Center, where children of all abilities can attend together. The Big Lift is another important local early education effort, which seeks to improve third grade reading through specific targeted language and literacy strategies in preschool through third grade settings. The Big Lift, which is the legacy of former supervisor Carol Groom, is grateful to Senator Becker for securing a $1 million state allocation to continue this important work. The County of San Mateo and the San Mateo County Office of Education lead this collective impact effort, which reaches 3,000 low-income children annually. Evaluations consistently show that children receiving Big Lift preschool enter kindergarten more ready by a significant margin. The final state investment that I'd like to highlight are the historic reforms to the rates paid to childcare providers, which are now also starting to move the needle on staff wages. Center-based childcare programs had their rates increased by more than 50%, and we're seeing teacher wages, which averaged $22 back in 2017, start at $30 an hour or more in some preschools. I want to end by emphasizing the importance of high-quality early care and education for a child's development. Many families understandably kept their children home during the pandemic, but we want families to know that it is safe to return to these programs. 90% of a child's brain development happens before the age of 5. Regularly attending early learning programs prepares children to be fully ready for kindergarten. Families can learn more about childcare and preschool options through the San Mateo 4 Cs, which can be found online at www.sanmateo4cs.org. We're grateful to Senator Becker's leadership in Sacramento on issues impacting young children, their families, and their care providers, and we look forward to the ongoing work with him on these critical issues. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. It was fun to hear those updates and talk about the Ann Campbell preschool. I got to work with Ann. She was, of course, our superintendent immediately before Nancy McGee, and also heard update in the Big Lift. Big Lift, again, as Sarah mentioned, this is a pioneering effort really to create a state and hopefully national model to get every kid at grade level by third grade. Third grade is the key metric to have every kid at grade level, especially for reading, by third grade. And you mentioned increases for kids with disabilities, and the after school, actually, that was something you and I talked about today. I didn't even get quite as much information as that. Quite as much slots. You said how many after school slots available?
We're estimating that as many as 12,000 new after-school spaces will be created for low-income and foster youth in our county.
Yeah, good, excellent. Well, we got to move on. Thank you, Sarah, for joining us. We'll have a few other special guests as we go along. One thing I did want to mention as we're going to leave the education section, and obviously we can only do kind of cursory in each of these areas, but hopefully you're getting some of the highlights, is tutoring. Tutoring is something that everyone can do. During the pandemic, a lot of places started to move to more online tutoring, and sometimes you have a long-term commitment, sometimes you can do it on a shorter-term basis, but two organizations I want to mention, Healthy Cities Tutoring at healthycities.site is one, and Upward Scholars at upwardscholars.org are good places if you'd like to tutor, and we'll get some more resources on tutoring as well, because I think that's one area across the district where people can really help and help a kid who may be struggling and could use that additional help. It's something I did when I was in high school. I still remember, that child that I tutored, so it has a big impact on going both ways. So if that's something you're interested in, let us know, and we'll get some more resources out there for folks as well. Moving on now to this cool graphic around responsible technology. And this is a big priority. Representing Silicon Valley is both an honor and a privilege, and it's a chance to highlight and advance some of our innovations, and also a chance to make sure that that technology is being responsible here in our state and across the country. And one of the biggest things, probably the biggest thing that I've really done in my career in the legislature is something called the Delete Act. As some people know, data brokers are, by definition, third parties that you've no personal relationship with. And there are hundreds of them who you do not know their names of because you don't have a personal relationship with. But sometimes they're the big credit agencies, but then a lot of other ones as well. And they have thousands of pieces of information on each one of us, including everyone we've ever lived with, every place we've ever lived. Many cases our cell phone number, sometimes our social security number, very detailed profiles, and a lot of people don't necessarily know about this, and if they do know, they'd like to get their information removed so that information is not out there in this way. And of course, if that information is hacked or whatever, sometimes can be used in scams. And so I focus on something, and I created something called the Delete Act, which is a one-stop shop to delete your information from all data brokers. And it's going to take a few years to roll in, but we got to pass over a lot of opposition. And that's why you see some of the highlights here talking about this, one of the world's most powerful privacy tools. And stay tuned for more information about that, or let us know. And I've now been asked on a lot of local TV stations. I did on Cron 4 recently, just to talk about how to protect yourself online when you're shopping online over the holidays and beyond. And we're happy to talk more about that. Then another key area is AI, and our district is one of the leaders in AI. Many of the leading companies are here, and therefore we want to make sure that we ensure the ethical use of and public trust in AI. And so I've had a bill to create kind of a leading working group on that. But we're looking at other ideas right now for the next session about things that we can do to help ensure the ethical use. And it's obviously an important area. And if you have ideas, as I'm sure many of our district do, please let us know. Now I'm going to talk about a couple areas throughout where we're making some progress. In this area, I'll talk about some hopeful tools, but not progress that is really seen yet on the streets, and especially if you go to, say, a place like San Francisco. And so this is an area that I feel very passionate about. And I feel like we should be able to end unsheltered homelessness. We put a person on the moon, we can end unsheltered homelessness, but we've got a lot of work to do. And it's an area that I've not made as much progress as I would have hoped in the first 3 years but we did pass some big tools, and we'll talk about. And this is um, a crisis as people are living and increasingly dying on our streets, and we must do more. This is a picture of the new Life Move shelter in Redwood City, and this is fantastic. It was built very quickly. It has 250 units. These are modular. These are stacked modular structures, so it's be able to be built and assembled very quickly. A ton of on-site services, healthcare, dental services, all kinds of some therapy, and really focus on getting people back on track. And this is a real model, and really proud of our community of Life Moves. And again, our area, we're fortunate we have some really ambitious goals. In San Mateo County, led by our county manager, Mike Callaghy, we did a town hall on this. Many of you may have joined us for that. And San Mateo County has a goal of getting to functional zero for the homeless population, and is working very actively towards that goal. Santa Clara County has many we have a lot of priorities as well, and as I'll talk about, broke ground in Palo Alto on 80 units of these interim modular units as well. But increasingly, you can't talk about homelessness without saying, great, there's many parts of the homeless population, and we really have to, and we can't ignore the folks who, the 25 to 40% of the homeless population that has a serious mental illness. And we did three things over the past 2 years that will make a big difference there. I'm hoping will make a big difference there. One is Care Court. This is connecting a person struggling with untreated mental illness or substance abuse challenges with a court-ordered care plan for up to 2 years. It's a whole part of the court system focused on this population, is starting initially with folks who are schizophrenic, which is about 5,000 to 7,000 people that have a severe schizophrenic disorder. That's the initial focus. A couple counties rolled this out early. Other counties will be rolling this out as of January 1st. Expanding conservatorship, we passed it unanimously, led by my great colleague, Senator Eggman from Stockton, to finally do what people believe needs to be done now for decades, to expand conservatorship by expanding the definition of severely grave and disabled. Now, as you see in some places, like San Francisco said, they're going to roll this out as soon as available on January 1st, as soon as it becomes law. Other counties like Santa Clara have said they're going to take the full 2 years to roll this out. So we'll see how this plays out. The governor certainly wants people to roll it out as soon as possible. And it's one of the tools that we've not had, that everyone agrees we need to have. Not everyone agrees, because there was some opposition, even to this, but it passed unanimously, and I'm optimistic it's going to be one of those tools that can be helpful. And then the Mental Health Services Act. This is the millionaire's tax that's been on the ballot for about 20 years and has generated tens of billions of dollars for mental health services down to the counties, and it's been gone to some good things. But we realized we really have to take a portion of that, and we voted to take a quarter of that money and put it into behavioral health housing. So that will be on the ballot, combined with, in the March ballot, with a bond, about a $6 billion bond. And those things together will create 11,000 beds of behavioral health housing. So this is everything from locked beds to the next level down of behavioral health housing with support and services that have been desperately needed across our state. So we're very hopeful that these three tools can make a difference. And I think when I talk to people about it and say, hey, we actually have a strategy, I've talked to people who appreciate, okay, there is a strategy, we've got a plan in place, and now we have to implement that. Another new tool is this notion of interim modular housing. And some of these units, again, are fixed units, like in Redwood City or in Palo Alto. This is the groundbreaking we did for, I believe, about 80 units in Palo Alto. So they're still modular. They can still be built a lot faster, but these are fixed units. I also have a bill promoting these relocatable modular units. So if there's a area that's going to be a housing development, maybe in 5 or 10 years, but it's going to take 5 or 10 years, because unfortunately that's often what it takes, we can put these units on, and if we need to move them, we will move them. You can see that right now at, I believe it's 333 Goff, that a nonprofit Dignity Moves did. That's been a big model, and many areas, San Jose is very much embracing this model. Santa Barbara County, extremely embracing this model. And my bill will make these this move open up more land really in especially on public property, publicly owned land that say a water district or other owns, and or again in these private areas, especially when they're just not going to be used, say for the next 3 to 5 years. And again, we can move this if we need to. So a really promising model that I believe we can, between these two things that we've mentioned, um, these two strategies, to really get many, many, many more people indoors. And I will report back on that on our progress. Affordable housing is a priority, obviously, across the board in our community. And I've had 3 bills that have passed the last 3 years. One is removes red tape for developers trying to construct affordable housing developments, and make sure that we don't punish um, developers. So cities that don't have a pro housing designation, uh, we were actually punishing the affordable housing developers in those cities, which need affordable housing. So this bill removes that part. Secondly, I had a bill that allows for intergenerational affordable housing. It used to be that if it was fully 100% affordable, you could only do, say, senior housing or, say, transitional age youth housing for transitional age foster youth. And this allows this intergenerational affordable housing. And lastly, 948 was a pooled loan loss reserve, which I won't get into all the details, but basically estimated this will free up around 40 million per year for affordable housing to create this pooled reserve for affordable housing developers rather than this each one having their own reserve, which was almost never used. But that being said, obviously we need a lot more money, and just mandates from the state alone is not going to cut it, as I hear repeatedly from my cities across the state. We actually need money for affordable housing. So, and we have to streamline the process. California has a very Byzantine process for affordable housing developers, among the most complicated in the country. And that's something we need to fix. And we need more money. Santa Clara County had Measure A that's financed over 5,000 new and renovated units. And in the ballot in November, we're going to have something called BAFA, Bay Area Housing Finance Administration. So this will be a significant amount of money for affordable housing across the whole Bay Area. And it's what's needed because, as we know, mandates from Sacramento don't do anything if we don't actually have the money to back it up. We cannot build a way to affordable housing or just do it just through inclusionary zoning. It's not working. We need more dollars for dedicated affordable housing, and look for future town halls this year on things like teacher housing, where we do have some good models in the district and some other things being developed, and affordable housing roundtable that I'm doing, that I'll be doing coming up in the first quarter next year with looking at what's working in affordable housing. Looking at some of the Q&A that's coming in, see if there's anything that's directly related to this. Someone says, I think the homeless strategy might just work, which is nice to see. And from Arlene, and some other comments about the builder's remedy. This is not a state law. This is something that basically says if districts do not have if cities don't have an approved housing development, housing element plan, then people can build whatever they want. And I don't think that's right. And so I've come out against a lot of those projects, and also have a call coming up on Wednesday with the head of HCD to say, how can you work with our cities better? A lot of cities are trying to get these housing elements developed, and but very hard, especially in some of our areas that don't have commercial rezone or don't have retail to rezone. And the ones that have done a lot of rezoning, we have to figure out how can we actually get stuff built, say on the El Camino, and that's where some of these more dollars for affordable housing comes in. So a very complicated topic, and we'll be addressing it more next year. I did want to make sure to touch on it. Okay, so a couple other key areas. One, where actually we are making a lot of progress, and I'm very proud of this, where we actually have a strategy around reducing wildfires, and it's working. What are we doing? 8 things. Won't have a chance to go through all of these, but a lot of these actually fall into my subcommittee. I chair the subcommittee that does a budget for billions of dollars for natural resources, forest management, climate, water, all of these critical areas. And so we've had a real strategy. So that includes new things like embracing new technologies, as well as let's call it old technologies like prescribed burns, embracing some of the practices that, say, the Native American populations used on these lands many years ago. So in the wildfire prevention, prescribed burns, healthy forest management, where we're treating more acres, and we have a goal, and that's something I hope to create a website. You'll actually see some of the progress we're making, as well as insulating undergrounding power lines in key areas, although that's very expensive. PG&E wants to underground everything, which we can't do, but we can underground key areas, excuse me, and then we can insulate other areas, so we don't have these uninsulated wires that we've had in the past, and that we actually have make use of some of this biomass that's coming out of some of the thinning and other work being done, that we can actually have productive uses for that. But the real priority is in firefighting equipment. With under my leadership and some of the previous leadership, we've gotten billions of dollars more for CAL FIRE, for more men and women on the ground, as well as aerial resources. And I'll talk about that in a moment, which is really significant. And home hardening. We've emphasized home hardening. I want to thank our local Sierra Club, who's done a tremendous effort to educate people around home hardening. And I hope to do a town hall maybe on that coming up next year. For now, you can go to readyforwildfire.org, readyforwildfire.org, which is a site that CAL FIRE runs that has information about hardening your home. And I'll talk a little bit more about the aerial resources, because this has been absolutely critical. So I find my notes on this for a second, because I moved this around. We have invested in a way like no other state has in aerial resources. And what that's done is, when I talk to our folks, they say basically no other state could buy a wildfire helicopter for about a year, because we had bought these up. And we have 24 new helicopters just this year, strategically positioned in fire-prone areas. In addition, with 4 new Firehawk night-capable helicopters, which also have increased capacity to carry water. 24 additional firefighting aircraft, which includes contracts for 19 additional helicopters and 5 airplanes, including 3 large air tankers with extra retardant capability. So these can actually go to a lake and suck up water, and then be right at the fire. And we have these strategically positioned across the state so that everyone is within I think it's with 20 or 30 minutes of anywhere else in the state that we have these things positioned so that we can fight these fires. So as a result, we're getting much better at early detection and early suppression. And that's really the key with wildfires. You have to detect them early and suppress them early. I did a wildfire tech town hall about 2.5 years ago, and some of the startups on that town hall are now national and also international, actually. I was in Australia on a tour doing about wildfire and climate and insurance, and one of them was on TV in Australia, working in Australia. And so we've seen this, a lot of these technologies now really spread, including a whole venture funds just focused on wildfire technology. And that, combined with aerial resources, really made a difference. As you'll see, in 2021, about 7,300 fires with 2.5 million acres burned and 3,500 structures destroyed. Now, we've had some good weather conditions as well, for sure, and that's helping us, and hopefully we'll get another good year with some good weather conditions. But we've actually still had a lot of wildfires, 7,500 last year, over 7,000 this year. But we're detecting them and getting them put out much faster. So if you look at the acres burned, it's only a little over 300,000 this year and 360,000 last year, with only 70 structures destroyed this year and 772 last year. So we need a couple good more years of weather while we get the rest of this treatment and undergrounding and all the prevention work done. But we are making a lot of progress. And that's an area I'm happy to report about. Part of this issue is also property insurance. So this is a huge issue in the district. We did a town hall on that. If people would like, we'll do another one. Climate change increased the risk. Also, we've had legacy rules that have been a big, made it difficult for insurance companies to operate here. So there's reforms underway, but this still remains a critical issue. For example, we need more discount when homeowners harden their homes. So we're starting to phase some of that in. So this is a big issue. Our team is working on it, but continues to be a big issue. I hear about a lot throughout the district. Right now, I'm going to get into climate change, as you know, is a big priority, and I'm going to quickly look through some of the Q&A, see if there's anything I can answer as we go along. We could have a question on wildlife habitat, some affordable housing stuff I'll come back to. SB 410, I will talk about that in a minute. Pat Showalter, one of our great council members and leaders in Mountain View, says safe parking is working well in Mountain View. And there's a request there that Pat I will get to, but that's one of the things we're working on also in the homelessness area is safe parking. Kevin asked about wildfire insurance. Arthur has a point around wildfire as well. So some good comments that I'll try to come back to, but certainly we'll take those into consideration. On climate change, we always start with this donut slide, which is we don't expect you obviously to read all of it, but just it's really the point to know that we're focused on where the emissions are coming from. 50% transportation, 16% from electricity sector, 10% from natural gas for building heating, but also agriculture, industrial, and other areas. And so we're focused on each one of those areas. I've had 9 bills passed, and I'm not going to go into them all because we do not have time, but happy to talk about them at another date. SB 410, this is one of the questions that came in the Q&A. And this is something I worked on for 3 years, and we finally got done to hold PG&E accountable to connect new homes, hospitals, as well as EV charging infrastructure, all these things to the grid. We were getting calls saying in San Mateo County, there was a hospital and they were losing $1 million a month because they just couldn't get it connected to the grid. And we put together this bill with the workforce piece, the accountability and the resources. And now this is seen as a national model. I say, I just did it here because there was a big, I won't use an expletive, a big problem here. But now all the charging companies and all this want to take it across the country, and that's reassuring to see when we can do things that become a national model. The utility fixed charge has been talk of a lot of talk and a lot of anger from our community. I wrote an op-ed with Mark Berman, our assembly member in the southern part of my district, about why it's a mistake and we should shy away from real solutions. You can find that Palo Alto online. And certainly we'll continue to bird dog this. This is, again, something that doesn't come through the legislature. It's through the PUC, so we don't have direct control over it. I am working on it, however, and stay tuned. Obviously, let us know if you want to discuss that further. And then the things we've done this year, and we're joined by one of California's experts in a moment to talk about some of these and more. But some of the really new things I did this year, it turns out that we own all that right of way around highways. We could actually use this for solar, renewables, and transmission. And estimate is 3 gigawatts just in 3 counties in Southern California, for example. And I got that passed, again, hoping it becomes a national model. A bill around streamlining clean energy siting and permitting, which was one of the governor's big initiatives. And then investing in clean, reliable energy, including offshore wind, and making it easier to do that. So with us here is Janet Cox. Janet, are you with us?
Yep, I'm here.
Okay, excellent, excellent. Janet Cox was one of the leaders at 350 Silicon Valley and the founder of Climate Action California, and hoping that you could share any comments for our district here today and our community about maybe what you thought some of the big things that happened this year in the legislature and some of the action, some of the work we need to do.
Thank you, Senator Becker. It's really great to be here, and I hope you can hear me. Is this working?
Yep,
I think.
Yep.
Yeah, it's wonderful to be here. Climate Action California is statewide. It's all volunteer, and we're kind of laser focused on climate issues, particularly short-lived climate pollutants, including methane and refrigerants, transportation electrification, and anything that moves us quicker to a low carbon economy. And working with Senator Becker is just a treat because, you know, we're really focused on these climate bills. So from my point of view, Senator Becker is swinging for the fences all the time. He's got amazingly important and, you know, carefully tuned bills to really make a difference. But as you've been hearing, this is just one of a bajillion number of issues that he's kind of legislatively hyperactive on, and it's a gift. So I just really, I'm impressed listening to all this, but I just have to say that, you know, as folks listening are probably aware, every climate win is a fight all the way. It's never easy. Oil and gas see us coming, and you know, this is existential for them in the same way that it's existential for us and for the planet. And to have a legislator who is as committed and effective as Senator Becker is just a gift. And
Well, thank
we all
you. Yeah,
have to.
GK, we are actually, people don't realize that. So, but we are one of the largest oil producing states. So oil is a big part and actually the largest contributor in our state legislature. What were some of the other big, what were some of the things you were most excited about? I also co-authored, we did a bill around corporate disclosure of emissions that was sort of the talk of Climate Week, as well as something the SEC probably should have done years ago around the climate risk disclosure for companies. Were you excited about those bills, or what were some of the things you were most excited about this year? In
Well,
addition to stuff
those
that I did?
disclosure bills, so there was a bill that required disclosure of emissions and a partner bill that requires disclosure of climate-related financial risk. We put together a petition that had got 11,000 signatures from around the country urging Governor Newsom to sign those bills because we were never exactly sure that he was going to do it. But I think those, you know, there were a lot of good bills. Some of them have been carried over until next year as 2-year bills. But by the end of the session, those 2 disclosure bills and an assembly bill that requires adequate bonding for a lot of oil and gas wells to cover closure and remediation when they're done, which they're all verging on done. Those were the big wins. The bills that Senator Becker carried, you know, are making a big difference in the area of utility regulation and the need that the state has to really expedite the infrastructure transition to the kinds of energy sources that we need, and getting rid of oil and gas and the gas plants. And I think that the senator's focus on utility issues has been tremendously helpful. And I know that, you know, that you're considering more such bills in the future, and we just really have to stay on it because
Yes,
the
yes.
utilities they have to adjust, and they have to adjust quickly, and change kind of isn't in their culture.
Right. Yeah, I'm
So-
leading, while you're talking, I had a chance to go through some of the Q&A. We're getting a lot of things in the Q&A, and one says, you know, utilities should not be for-profit corporations. I would not disagree with you. But others say, how are you going to hold them accountable on SB 410? Absolutely. We had a call with the Commissioner Douglas just the other day. On that, we had some comments on the utility tax, as well as 308. That's one of my 2-year bills on carbon removal, and not carbon capture, but removing carbon from the atmosphere, the legacy stuff that's all admitted. So Pete, thank you for asking about that. I'll have probably more to say about that at a later date. But we'd be happy to take your help with the team. But Jan, we should move on. But thank you very much. Thanks for everything you and Climate Action California is doing. As you said, a lot of progress this year. The last 2 years, Mayor Kreisman, head of the League of Conservation Voters, said last year was the biggest year for climate in decades in California. Actually, I think she mentioned California's history. And this year was a big one as well, but a lot more work to do. And as you point out, it's a struggle every day, but thank you for your help and other organizations that are working on it.
And I just want to add that it's really, what's one thing that's really important is the fact that you, Senator Becker, are chairing the critical budget subcommittee that can deal with these issues. Because in a lot of cases, when we can't get something through legislatively because the opposition is all over us, the budget offers a different way to get the job done. And it's just, it was a wonderful moment for California and the climate when they appointed you to that position. So thank you.
Excellent. Good. Thank you. Thank you, Janet. And said a lot of other good comments on a lot of issues. Arthur, as always, has some good suggestions on the housing front. I will follow up. Someone said I voted for SB 10, which I did not vote for. But appreciate a lot of obviously discussion on that, which is a critical issues. And I say it, and again, I thank our city council folks who are working very, very hard to comply and say, hey, okay, if we're going to build, here's where it works for our communities. And I want to try to be supportive of that. In economic mobility, and again, a lot of that on I think on El Camino, we're starting to see some of that. Economic mobility is one of my key issues. Economic opportunity I mentioned, and we do have a low poverty rate here, but high income inequality, of course, in our communities. And it's something, of course, exacerbated when you talk about affordable housing, and people minimum wage right now are making 30,000-ish a year. And you can imagine how hard it is to live on that. And one of the mantras that we say with some of my friends at labor is one job should be enough. And that's really the goal, to get people to be able to afford to live here on one job. And we did some big things this year in terms of raising the minimum wage of healthcare workers. These are people working in our healthcare sector who are making less than $25 an hour. And we would be able to raise that up. Also, a minimum wage of fast food workers. This is 500,000 fast food workers, over 500,000 healthcare workers that will get significant raises as part of this. We've increased paid sick days with my friend Senator Gonzalez leading the way with SB 616. And our nonprofit partners have reported that the demand for all services is up. Food and financial assistance has reached the COVID peak. And I've seen that when I've been on the kind of front lines with some of these organizations. We do an annual coat drive, which is over, but if you want to drop off coats, this was with Ecumenical Hunger Project in East Palo Alto, fantastic organization. By the way, my son's school leads, I'm very proud, has the Menlo Atherton has the largest public school canned food drive in the country. And I happened to be there, and she pointed out the warehouse that was full with all the canned food that was donated by, or collected by the students from Menlo Atherton. And then I dropped by their distribution day just 2 Saturdays ago when they were giving out that food. It was very fun. Samaritan House does incredible work. These 2 people I'm with here, the 2 gentlemen with the heart, and then the other guy with this striped shirt, they're just people, they just started giving away turkeys and bringing turkeys to Samaritan House. And now they're doing, I think, thousands of turkeys, just the 2 of them collecting. So when you see the spirit of volunteerism throughout our community, that's what is always exciting and inspiring and reassuring to me. I mean, this is a team effort. And one thing I didn't address, maybe I'll touch base on the end, is the state budget deficit. And we are heading into tough times, and it's going to require us even more so to pull together as a community. And as I mentioned, anything you can do over the holidays, volunteering, as many of you do already, is very much appreciated. I was able to get $1.5 million for the Community Services Agency of Mountain View, Los Altos, and Los Altos Hills. This is going to allow it to expand. It's very small pantry, very busy as it was when I was there, with lines, unfortunately around the block. But it's going to let them expand the work that they do. And I was able to present that just a few weeks ago. One of the areas that's, you know, as tech sort of goes through its um, cycles, and we've seen a lot of layoffs actually in the tech sector, although of course still a large employer here. We've seen biotech really emerge in importance. South San Francisco is really the birthplace of biotech. It employs 160,000 people now across the state, and there are millions of square feet, about almost 10 million square feet of new biotech office space just in my district alone, going up. And those are usually industries that are less, of course, biotech is affected by the economy's ups and downs, but medicine itself is not always. And so hopefully that will be okay throughout the inevitable ups and downs here. But it's making us less reliant just on tech in other areas, and something I wanted to mention. Now we'll get to public safety, and this is obviously a huge issue on people's minds whenever I talk to folks, certainly when they go to San Francisco, but even here in our district in San Mateo County, Santa Clara County as well. Somebody asked in the chat about, are we spending too much money compared to other states? And the answer is yes. We are spending, as you see, the United States and California overall, we have very high incarceration rates compared to, say, other countries. But even compared to other states, we spend a massive amount of money. It's about $15 billion a year on our prison system. And it's something that sucks up a lot of our state budget that could be used on other things. And so we have closed a few state prisons this year, and a couple others still slated to close. At the same time, we have to make sure we're investing in rehabilitation, and I'll talk more about that in a second. One of the areas that's gotten a lot of publicity is retail crime, and we did have $267 million that we allocated from the state. Our sheriff, who'll be on in a minute, tells me we were #1 in San Mateo County for that money, and got a $13 million grant. San Jose also got an $8.5 million grant. Fentanyl, many of you were on my fentanyl town hall, and I appreciate the comments on that. I supported a bill that required college health centers to stock fentanyl test strips. Our office is now, we were trained in Narcan, and please, if you did not see our town hall, go back and watch it. There's some great resources for parents. Again, I, as a parent of 2 teenagers, were particularly interested in this. Fentanyl has killed almost 7,000 people across our state in 2021. The most recent numbers I saw right before this, about 7,000 of about 8,000 opioid deaths across the state. And please rewatch our town hall and let us know if you have any questions. We're working on that. And then gun safety is a huge issue as well. I want to mention, I had a couple bills that will help hundreds of thousands, 100,000 people in prison and families. We want to actually keep families connected. And we had this exploitative system across the country where 2 private companies were making money on prison phone calls. And we actually want people to be connected. So when, 99% of people are going to get out, and we want them connected in their community. And I passed a bill on free prison phone calls that's helping those families, reducing the financial burdens of egregious markups of necessities, including hygiene items and food sold in prisons. We saw a little thing of toothpaste that was like $2 at Walmart with $6 inside for like a half tube. And then something that really became an issue in Palo Alto was police transparency. Palo Alto was the canary in the coal mine. They've actually reversed themselves now and are allowing transparency once again for police radios. But many communities across the state are encrypting their communications. And I have a bill that's what's called a 2-year bill, meaning I'm still working on it to try to increase that transparency. Now we're very fortunate to have our sheriff, Christina Corpus, on with us. And Christina, you've only been in office, I think, is it only a year? But you've done so much. I can't believe it's only been a short amount of time. But I was hoping that you could come and talk about some of the things that you're doing, some of the things you see in our communities too. I mean, for example, I know when you're in Mill Bay, you really pioneered the use of these automated license plate readers that we're seeing success with in many of our cities. And you're changing the culture of the sheriff's office in I think really important ways. Just appreciate anything you want to share with us about our communities and what you're doing to make our communities safer.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me, Senator Becker. Yeah, so I've been in office, yeah, it's been almost a year, and it's been quite a year. I feel like I'm doing a lot of catch up, and there's not enough hours in the day. But I know it's, as long as we're making the effort to change, and really look at the way that we serve our community, and not so much of the traditional way of law enforcement. And so, some of the things that we're instilling in, at least here in the sheriff's office, is changing the culture. And, it's people first, service above self, and going beyond the call. And what we mean by going beyond the call is, once we go to the call for service, really getting the deputies to start thinking about how else can we help this family, or how else can we help this individual. And I'll give you an example. About a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago, we had an unfortunate circumstance on the coast where we had two farm workers drown. And what could we do to change that? So we teamed up with Maverick Swim Club and Half Moon Bay High School, and we were able to put over 100 kids of farm workers into swim class, and now we have 100 new swimmers on the coast. So we're really thinking about ways that we can really touch the community in different ways where it's a positive outcome. We recently launched a program called Lights On, which it gives the deputies an opportunity. So if they stop a motor vehicle for any type of a light malfunction on the vehicle, the deputies then have that opportunity to change that circumstance of, possibly giving that person a ticket and having court fees on top of having to have a light repaired, where we understand that there are some circumstances where people are trying to put food on the table or pay their rent. And this gives the deputies an opportunity to give the person a voucher instead of a ticket. And that voucher would then allow for the person to go to one of our participating auto body shops, where they would then be able to get their light fixed for free. And so those are things that we're trying to change, actually, in the culture of the organization, being more transparent, looking at telling stories about the things that we do and why we do them. So we keep in constant communication with our community members, and then asking our community members. I was able to launch our advisory boards. We have 3 of them, one on the coast side, we have one in North County and one in South County. And I've been able to meet with them on a quarterly basis and really get input and find out what are the problems or what are the concerns in their specific communities, and addressing them together as a community. And so those are ways that we are making some changes. But in regards to ALPRs, when I was in Millbrae, yeah, I made a huge effort because of all the vehicles we were getting. These really sophisticated groups of individuals and were coming into the city of Millbrae and committing, auto theft, residential burglaries. And so the ALPRs really helped us and enabled us to stop crime. And it actually even helped us when we had a road rage incident where there was a resident that was severely beaten. And without those cameras being there, we would have never known who the assailant was. So they've been very effective. The city of Millbrae is able to ask us for audits, and at any point in time. And so that's another part of being important, of being transparent. And then, we're dealing with, as you stated, a fentanyl crisis.
Yeah.
And
I know
what
you
we're-
sent me a bunch of slides on fentanyl that I think we'll have time to get into today, but I appreciated that it was really looking at the source of it,
Our
the
community
distribution of it,
Mhm.
and what we can do here to make sure kids are not falling victim to it. Kids and adults too, of course.
Yeah. So what we're really trying to do is educate our families, our community members, our school administrators, our teachers. The big problem is coming, unfortunately, it's being distributed out of Mexico and coming to San Francisco. And there are groups in San Francisco that are selling it, and then they're making its way to some of, our affluent communities, actually, in a pill form. And so we've had some unfortunate circumstances where we've had very young kids die because they went to a party and took a pill that they thought was something different and unfortunately overdosed due to the fentanyl. And the fentanyl now is being actually made with something called xylazine, which is a horse tranquilizer that a lot of veterinarians don't use anymore because of just the uncertainty of and the potency of this xylazine. And unfortunately, the Narcan does not work when we have that mixture. So it becomes even more crucial for us to get the word out and to educate our families. And a big part of it is what our high intensity drug trafficking area, our HIDA, is doing at the national and at the state level as well.
Two last things. I know I think we mentioned this in our newsletter, you have some openings, and maybe you could tell people, because you try to hire locally, which, and these are great jobs, and maybe you could tell people, mention that. You also have been a leader in domestic violence and working with Supervisor Noelle Kozro and placing experts within the sheriff's office. And well, maybe you could touch on those things very quickly.
Yeah, sure. So I've been very fortunate that I sit on the domestic violence task force, and I was able to get the support of the Board of Supervisors just last week to do a co-response model similar to the co-response models for whenever there's somebody in a mental health crisis situation, where we have a clinician that's embedded in the police department or the sheriff's office and would be a co-response to the call. So now we will have a co-response model for domestic violence, where we will have a domestic violence counselor embedded in the sheriff's office, and we'll be able to really help with the gaps of when we kind of lose that victim, and they feel, there's lots of challenges that come with domestic violence. It's a very complex situation. So this will give us an opportunity to really help provide services to the victims of domestic violence and help fill in those gaps where we've noticed that there are gaps there. And in regards to hiring, the sheriff's office is, always looking for women and men to work and represent, our county and our corrections division. So to be a correctional officer, you only have to be 18. But to be a deputy sheriff, it's 21. And so we're hiring. We've been, this big hiring push, but then we also have, due to attrition, we have people that are retiring. So we are looking for, women and men of our county. And if if you apply, become a deputy sheriff and you get hired, you get a $30,000 signing on bonus. And hopefully in the springtime, we'll be launching a child care center for our employees. So we have a location, we have a provider. Now we just have to kind of do the work in the facility to meet all the permits. But we are excited about being able to at least have a child care center for our employees that will accommodate the hours of when we work. So we're excited about that as well.
Well, thank you. And thanks. You've also been responsive when communities have said, hey, some communities have had issues with home break-ins, and you've been very responsive to those communities as we work to bring together law enforcement with the DAs, with the with the local cities to try to close a loop on those. And then we'll probably do a follow-on with you on this, on gun violence restraining orders. And that's something I'd like to come back to at a later time. We'll talk about what you are working on and how we can get the word out about those, because that's an important part of our gun violence strategy. And I know immediately after the horrific Half Moon Bay mass shooting early this year, you were on top of that, working with us on gun violence issues. So I appreciate that very much, and all that you're doing, and look forward to being in touch. Let me know how I can help. We have a new sheriff in Santa Clara County, Bob Johnson, so he's getting up to speed as well, and we'll hopefully have him on at some point in a future town hall. So thank you very much, Christina.
Thank you for having me.
Sheriff
Senator.
Clovis. Thank you. All right, we have just probably about 5 or so more slides here. We got some other comments that I may bring up just so when I wrap up at the end. I did want to talk about infrastructure and transit. I saw some comments from Dean Levin, one of our leading experts really in the state, and founder of Seamless Bay Area. And of course, I had a bill that I did on the Seamless bill to try to get better coordination of our overlapping transit agencies. But the immediate work at hand quickly with the pandemic became how do we actually save transit with drop in ridership, with work from home and other issues. Of course, part of that is no secret. It's also, people need to feel safe, particularly on BART. So there was a lot of overlapping issues. Some are starting to come back more so than others. And we did get the legislature, the governor had cut this from his budget. We got 1.1 billion for transit agencies. Actually not all of that's going to the Bay, but a lot of it is going to Bay Area transit agencies. And with that already has come a lot of requirements, and BART is, for example, is really stepping up, I believe now on issues like safety, putting in new fare gates. It's still going to take a while across the various stations. But they are putting in a lot of things that are needed. But I'm still focused on that, really focused on the peninsula. How can we get great separations? These are very expensive, but that allow us to have quieter and not have the train horns going, and allow us to not, cut our communities in half as we have more and more trains. And Dumbarton Rail, that's something that can be, I believe, transformative, where we own the right of way across the Dumbarton Bridge. Those are, of course, longer term projects, but in the meantime, it's really been about preserving transit and then pushing for this better coordination of just having fair coordination and schedule coordination, and better signage and wayfaring is going to go a long way. And I'm excited about what we're doing there in transportation. And one of the places I get to do that is because I'm now vice chair of the Bay Area Caucus, in line to be chair next year, and that gives me a regional lens across all these issues, including transit, of course, but also many things we talked about today: homelessness, cost of living, climate change, as well as I'm the vice chair of the Jewish Caucus, and it's been quite active, as you can imagine, after the horrors of October 7th, and working across our UC system, NCSU system, and places like Stanford on combating anti-Semitism on campus, as well as Islamophobia and other hate crimes. Unfortunately, we've seen some of those. Security grants for nonprofits; those are available. If your nonprofit is looking to apply, let us know. We can help, whether that be a synagogue, whether it be a mosque, whether it be another nonprofit that might be susceptible. Please let us know. And I'm really excited about these new responsibilities. Keep me busy, but keeping me active in Sacramento, which on behalf of our community, which I want to be. I want a quick note here. My Woman of the Year, I selected with Mark Berman, Belinda Hernandez Arriaga. Belinda is the leader of ALAS, a fantastic nonprofit on the coast, doing incredible work with farm workers, everything from food programs during the pandemic, but way more than that. Incredible mental health, summer camp for kids of migrant farm workers, housing now in downtown Half Moon Bay and in other areas for farm workers. Just a tremendous amount of cultural programs, and I wanted to mention that as one of the other fun things that we get to do. Looking ahead, I mentioned your ideas and how you can help. We have an Ought to Be a Law competition. Joe Simidian, who represented the seat, started the first one in our community, and then Jerry Hill, my predecessor. And now we have the 2024 There Ought to Be a Law competition. So if you have an idea, please submit it to us by January 8th. There's a little QR code. If you can't figure it out, write us and we will get you the information. And looking ahead to next year, one of the things that working on with the team and hopefully some of these will roll out this year, is strategy documents in some of these key areas. So as I mentioned, we actually have a wildfire strategy. I'm not sure people have articulated it as such. I do believe that we have one, and I've tried to articulate it here today, and I want to articulate it to all of you and your neighbors. Homelessness, I feel maybe for the first time in a while, we really have a strategy, and I want to get information out about that as well and be critiqued. On climate, we have a clear strategy. You've heard from some of our guest panelists about public safety and childcare. Of course, affordable housing continues to be a big area in our community, but I think we are making some progress, but we do need more ideas and of course more dollars for that, as I mentioned ahead. So these are all things we'll be working on. Julie asked about the deficit. Why do we have such a deficit? Well, as many of you know, because you pay these property taxes, our district pays a significant percent of property tax. We're about 2% of the state's population, and we pay, I estimate, between 10 and 15% of our income tax that the state receives. And income tax is the main source of our revenue, partly legacy of Prop 13. And so we're very dependent on income tax. And so when wealthy Californians do well, we have a lot of revenue. And when they don't, it really impacts our state revenue. And we had these massive IPOs and SPACs and acquisitions in 21 and 22 that really fueled our budget, and those have dropped off, and it's taken its toll. We did, of course, increase spending. A lot of that was one-time spending, so that won't be going forward, but there is some of it that's going to be ongoing spending that we need to find a way to try to keep. So it's, deficits are a very difficult time, but they're also an opportunity to really refocus and see what's working. Where do we get the biggest bang for our buck? And that's my job, and my role now currently on the budget committee is try to look at where we have the biggest bang for the buck and where can we make keep investments that we've made and maybe cut some things that are not working. So those will be big issues this year. Thanks to everyone else that's written in. Holly wrote about homeowners sharing their units in their homes, and look at HIP Housing, which does that here. It's a huge solution, been very helpful to a good friend of mine. Larry Moody wrote in about Life Moves and the Economic Mobility Center that they're building, that we help secure dollars for, and the economic opportunity work that's being done with Life Moves and Renaissance Entrepreneur Center, both in South San Francisco and in East Palo Alto. So a lot of good comments. Sorry we couldn't get to all of them, but I appreciate it. I hope that you found this informative. Please let us know what you thought of this town hall. We have not done it in this format before, but as I mentioned at the beginning, hopefully you've left somewhat optimistic that we have strategies in some of these areas, but also how much work there is to do, certainly, and I can certainly use your help. So we're going to look for ways, whether it be you're out there volunteering or tutoring, as we mentioned, or hardening your own home at readyforwildfire.org. I believe that's the website. Or you're helping us in other ways, or you want to get us a direct idea for a bill that could become law, hopefully, here in California. Please let us know. I love this job, and I appreciate the opportunity to keep doing it. And thank you for joining us here today. Bye, everyone.